Steve, what's up, brother? Great to see you again. It's been years, but glad to have you back on.
I was checking the last email correspondence, and I think it was over a decade ago. Is that possible?
No, no, it's not possible.
Not possible. Okay.
It's probably close though, because a decade, that sounds crazy. I think I think we recorded in 2016, if I remember correctly, because I
Hmm.
started in 2015. So 8 years ago certainly would have been possible, but I think it's 6, 7 years ago.
That sounds about right. That sounds about
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I just can't believe. I mean, obviously, your business has grown. What we're doing here has grown. It's pretty cool to see guys that I talked with in the early stages of this movement, to see what they've developed and built, and to see what we've built. And it's really cool to connect with people again.
I mean, I just love people that follow through. And clearly, I mean, your business has lasted the test of time, your podcast has, and that's great.
Well, I think that's a rarity, right? People. Well, thank you first and foremost. I feel the same way about what you're doing, but I think it is a rarity, and it's interesting as we talk with men. One of the things that I feel like we can do as men to set ourselves apart, whether it's in the business market or the dating market, is just to say what you mean what you say, follow through on your commitments, stay consistent. When you mess up, and we all do, fix it, correct it, keep going, don't deviate. It's not a complex process, but man, sometimes look, I struggle too. We all struggle.
I mean, this is why I like your pod too, because I feel like this generation just kind of gives up too easily. And that's just something that I've been instilling my kids, just follow through, suck it up, and just get through it.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think about the generations that are coming up. They have huge advantages that we didn't have, right? Like I
Mhm.
think about my oldest son and his desire to start his own podcast and do same things similar to what I was doing. And I had a friend who was talking with him and said, I hope you understand the lessons and the coaching and the mentoring that you're receiving. This would be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to go out and get this on your own because you and I have created it. But I'm wondering what you think about it, especially as it relates to family, because I know obviously family is crucial to you. The business
Yep.
is important to you. Like, where's the line of presenting our children with opportunities that maybe we didn't have, but then on the other side of it, giving them too much so that they don't go through the trial and error that we went through to help us be successful?
It's funny, Ryan. I found that my kids like to copy us. So my kids were actually interested in starting their own e-commerce store. And they started it when they were 9 and 11 years old. And my wife and I, we tried not to help. They basically invested their own money. They kind of struggled through the website. They struggled through the design. We helped them with a couple of things, but essentially they made $1,000 in their first month, and they largely did things by themselves. And you know, c- I documented this entire process, but along the way there were some tears because the way we market. So they started a t-shirt business selling
Mm.
entrepreneurship t-shirts for kids, and the way we marketed it together was we created these videos on YouTube that we posted on Facebook and social, and people just loved their cute videos and they wanted to support them. But I remember, during the filming of those videos, like if you're not used to doing video, you struggle as soon as that camera starts recording. And my kids struggled, they cried. And every time we filmed a video for like, I would say the first three videos, they would cry for like 10, 15 minutes. But we kept doing it. I said, hey, we're not stopping until we get this done. And just over a period of, I would say, several weeks, they kind of got used to it.
Did they? So when you say they cried, I also think there's a line between, look, I don't know where it is. I'm trying to figure it out myself,
Yeah,
where we're being motivational and inspirational and giving them a little bit of positive encouragement, maybe pushing them past their comfort zone, and then taking it too far. And
sure.
how do you find the line there? When you say they cried for 15 minutes, it's like, well, do you keep going in that instance? Do you pull back? Do you change your approach? Like, what does that actually look like?
It depends on the situation, but sometimes if you just take a break, 10, 15-minute break for them to calm down, then you try again, then you try again. Here's the thing, Ryan. I was actually brought up in a pretty strict household, just like a traditional Chinese household where I mean, I was studying the SATs when I was in fourth grade because I needed to take it in order to qualify for this nerd camp. So I went through stuff that's like much worse than like I put my kids through. And looking back now on that, I just thank my parents for putting me through that because now I feel like it just came out that much stronger. Like I can take a lot of crap and still get through stuff. And I have a really good attention span, and I follow through on everything that I do. And that's basically what I was trying to do with my kids with this video because they weren't really giving me any good excuses why they couldn't do it. They were just frustrated, and it's understandable. When you do
Sure.
something new, you get frustrated, but just, take 15 minutes, calm down, we'll try again. It's all good.
That's interesting with your family and cultural upbringing. I mean, I think that's pretty stereotypical. Like if I were to think that, we think of you're Chinese, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I generally look, and maybe I'm not saying this correctly, but we generally think of Asian communities or Asian culture being very challenging, focused heavily on education, focused heavily on success and results. And, we see that play out within your community, I imagine as well.
It does. On the flip side, I do see values in not pushing them also,
Hmm.
and just letting them explore. Um, my sister-in-law uh, married a non-Asian husband, and they have different parenting styles. And what I found is just letting them explore, actually, at least with my nephews, it causes them to be a little bit more bold, so to speak, try new
Hmm.
things. Whereas if you're just too strict sometimes, they tend to just follow the rules, right? And not go out of those boundaries. So it's like a delicate balance, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess I hadn't considered that, but yeah, it's trying to toe the line and extract from your upbringing what you thought was valuable, and then interjecting new thoughts, new beliefs, new ideas, new experiences, so that you can maybe give them opportunities that they didn't have before, or you personally weren't exposed to.
You know what's really funny, Ryan? I was actually brought up in a household where I was taught that if you just work hard with your head down, people will notice and they will just notice and give you awards and gratitude for what you do. And it wasn't until I started my businesses did I realize that that was completely false, at least in the US, right? You need to ask for what you want in order to receive. And you need to be a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, but you need to be a little more bragging about yourself in order to get ahead.
Yeah, well, nobody else is going to do it for you. So you do need to promote a little bit. And look,
Yeah.
I'm a marketer at heart. I believe in the value of marketing. That's part of the reason we've had so much success. So yeah, it is important to promote yourself. I do. I do always laugh at the work hard mentality. I know plenty of hard workers that couldn't rub two nickels together, and it's like, okay, so is working hard the formula? Well, I would say it's part of it, but too many people believe that if I just work harder, I'm going to have success. Well, no, you could work harder doing the wrong things and not have success. We need to figure out the right things to be doing. I see this on social media oftentimes too. People will say, "Oh, my channel's not taking off, or my social media people aren't interested. I'm working so hard." They don't care how hard you're working. What they care about is your message, the way you can serve them, the way you can help them, the way you can benefit their lives. And once you wrap your head around that, a lot more success in that for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a distinction between working hard and working smart. I think most entrepreneurs, when they first start out, they work hard. And then once things maybe get out of hand, you kind of learn to work smarter so that you can actually free up some time to spend with the people that you love and that sort of thing.
That's been the biggest struggle for me is I'm naturally drawn to business. It speaks to me. It's I won't say it's easy, but it comes naturally for me is what I would say. And what ends up happening, because I am so focused on it, and I've equated it with the idea of providing for the people I care about, is that sometimes those people I care about get left in the dust. And that's a lot of the work that you do. Is how do you grow businesses? How do you create success in your life but not at the expense of your family and your loved ones?
Yeah. So what's funny is I did fall into that trap. And We started our business originally so that my wife could stay at home with the kids. That's why my blog is called My Wife Quit Her Job. We started selling handkerchiefs online. We replaced her salary within a year, and that was the goal for our business. But once things started taking off, and I don't know if this happened to you, Ryan, but I kind of got carried away. I wanted to just grow it, grow it, grow it. I was in these mastermind groups with people who were really successful, and I wanted to be like them. And so every year we would set these ridiculous goals, and then we would hit them, maybe celebrate for a day, and then set higher goals the next year. And it got to the point where my wife came up to me and she said in frustration, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun. We're already making way more than we spend. So what is the point of making more money?" And it was at that point that I realized that it was my ego that was just kind of driving all these businesses to grow, grow, grow. And we didn't really need, it wasn't really adding much marginal benefit to our lifestyle at all.
But how do you know if it's ego or if you do it for the intrinsic benefit of it or because you're serving people? Look, I don't know much about handkerchiefs. So from the outside looking in, I can't say that that's drastically going to improve somebody's life, but your work now or my work, I would say it can drastically improve the quality of people's lives. And so, how do you know if the work that you're doing is egocentric and ego driven, or you genuinely want to grow the movement, to grow the business, to grow your reach because you really care about serving those people in a powerful way?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the type of person you are. I mean, that's very important to me as well. And I've helped tons of people start their own businesses so they could, improve their lifestyle. But you have to remember why you start. You have to have a purpose for your business. My purpose for my businesses has always been to spend more time with family. And this kind of just extends from my childhood. My parents were first generation immigrants. They came here with no money and they basically worked their butts off so that they could provide for the kids. I didn't have to pay for college. I came out with no debt whatsoever. And I'm very thankful for that. But they worked so hard, long hours, that I didn't really see them that often. I remember I used to play club volleyball, and it was a traveling team. And I would look over at the sidelines when I was playing really well, and my friends' parents were there, but mine weren't often. I mean, they tried to make as many games they could, but they couldn't just pick up and travel because they had work. And I didn't want that for my kids. And so today, that's the purpose of my business is I coach their teams. I don't miss any events, and that's why I do it. And I would say the helping others is certainly up there in terms of priority, but family is first.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's a good perspective to maintain. Were you born in China or were you born in the US?
I was born in the US.
Okay. So, and you have siblings too?
I have one brother.
And he was born in the US or in China?
He was born in the US also. Yep.
What is your take from your parents? Are they still with us?
My dad passed away, but my mom is actually still working and she's 82, I think.
Oh, 82?
There's a good story behind why she's still working, though. She is a scientist. She discovered a cure for a disease. And right now, that cure is undergoing clinical trials. And so she's working just to see that trial through.
Whoa, so this was just recently then she discovered this
Yeah.
cure?
Recently, within like the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
Whoa. So what brought your folks to the States then?
So my mom came on a research scholarship in molecular biology. And my dad, he has a cooler story. He stowed away on a ship to flee China to Taiwan, and he left his entire family behind. And then he came to the US to study
Well, why did he
engineering.
flee? Why did he flee?
Just conditions in mainland China. It was during the communist revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your mom's take on what's going on currently with China and Taiwan? Because your dad has a connection clearly to Taiwan.
I think that she's just a little worried about the tensions. We don't actually talk about this subject too much. We
Yeah.
we talk most about our grandkids. Like she just always asks about the kids, but she is just worried. Uh, she's worried, kind of like about war, really. And you're talking about Taiwan in particular, right? With the
Yeah.
semiconductors and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very curious about that, especially with the tensions we see ramping up between Taiwan and China.
I think my mom is a little bit more insulated from all that stuff too, because she just kind of heads down, does her work, and then she comes home because she's older now.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I've been experiencing a lot more Asian hate as of late.
Really? Here
So yeah,
in the
in
States.
the oh yeah, definitely.
Really?
Because I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but whenever I talk about sourcing from China, which is something that we do for e-commerce, like a lot of our products are sourced from China, I get a lot of flack for it. Uh,
Is
and,
that,
and
would you say that's Asian hate, or would you say that's just patriotism or something else?
well, it's both actually. There's some
Okay.
just outright Asian hate, and I think it just happened because of our last president, with the tariffs, and we're kind of locked into this battle right now. I feel like China is our biggest adversary right now to the US, and so it just naturally gets reflected in the
Yeah, I
comments
could
I
see
get.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is not the direction I thought we'd go. I'm just curious because these cultural events they're important to me. I'm obviously vested in them, and I care about what's going on here. And uh yeah, I'm always not, I wouldn't say skeptical, just question the language that we use. Like we'll hear a lot of times uh the phrase transphobic. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? That means you're afraid of those who claim to be trans. Like, is that really the issue? Is that you're afraid, or that you hate that? No, it may mean something completely different. So I'm curious about your experience with hate versus a dislike, or it may be fueled by something else altogether. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've just learned not to respond. So I don't actually get into the discussion with any of these people, obviously, unless it's like a reasonable action. Here's how I see it, Ryan. The fact that I'm getting these hate comments means that I'm probably doing something right. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
if well,
Yeah.
you're getting attention, right? And you're being
Yeah.
noticed. I mean, we get our fair share of criticism too, and it's like, and a lot of times it's from faceless, nameless Facebook
Yeah.
and Instagram accounts. It's like whoever this is really took the time out of their day to go create an account online purely so they could troll you. That's unfathomable to me. It's so strange.
Here's the type of comment I get the most. It's the fact that immigrants are taking away US jobs, and the fact that we're getting all these imports from China. Everyone's always like, hey, I want made in the USA. I want made in the USA. That's what they say. But when you realize that, I'll give you an example. Like a handkerchief that I buy in China might be 50 cents. If I were to buy that same handkerchief in the United States, it'd be $4. So
Right.
if you want made in the USA, are you willing to pay 8x the amount for that item? Most people are not. So they say they want to support made in the USA, but they aren't willing to pay the prices. This even happens in our store. People always ask, they go, hey, was this made in China or was this made in the US? And I tell them, hey, we do have made in the US options if you want, and we steer them over to the made in the US options. But when we tell them the prices, they end up buying the Chinese product anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, a couple of things on that. Number one, you're not an immigrant. I mean, you were born in the U.S. You just said that, so
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
let's just call that out for what it is. And even if you were, that wouldn't matter either. I mean, isn't that the great American dream that we can have this place for people to pursue opportunities? The other side of it, with regards to made in China versus made in the U.S., look, I understand that. I would love more people to buy from those companies and organizations that make things here in America. So I think you either do it and pay more, like you're saying, or create the framework, create the structure, create the manufacturing, create the system, and start building things in America. Like, don't just say you want to do something or something else to be done. Like, go create it. We all have that opportunity to do that, and that is the great American dream in my mind.
And this is actually why we do all the custom embroidery in the US. I mean, technically we can call ourselves made in the US, but we don't say that our items are made from the US, but we handle everything. All of our personalization is done in-house in our warehouse.
So with regards to the business, so you had the handkerchief business that do you still run that? Do you still have
We
that
do,
business?
yeah. We actually just bought our own warehouse recently
Oh,
because the
really?
rents here in
In the
California were,
US?
in the
It's a
US.
joke.
Yeah. Yeah. The rents were getting out of control here in Northern California. We're in the
I
Bay Area.
bet.
So they were jacking us for 30% increase in rent every single year. So we decided
Whoa.
to just buy a place. And
Yeah.
it's been a great decision so far.
That's awesome.
Uh,
And what other businesses do you have? So obviously you have this business where you're teaching entrepreneurs how to create revenue that would replace their 9 to 5 and create these side hustles that become their
yeah,
lifestyle, their careers.
I'll give you the 60-second timeline. So we started Bumblebee Linens, which is the handkerchief store, so that my wife could quit. We ended up making 6 figures in profit in our first year, and that was great. She quit her job, took care of the kids. And then I decided to document our journey, mainly because our friends were asking questions. And so that's why mywifequitherjob.com was born. It was kind of like a personal journal for my e-commerce store. But what ended up happening is none of my friends read it. I attracted a bunch of random strangers that were reading about it, and they wanted to learn what we did. They asked for a class. So mywifequitherjob.com is the blog. I started a course in 2011 over at profitableonlinestore.com. That led to a podcast, led to a YouTube channel, and that led to an annual e-commerce event that I've been running for the past 7 years called the Seller Summit. And this year I have a book coming out.
That's awesome. I know there's a lot of guys that are dissatisfied in their work, and I'm sure you've run across that quite a bit. People are maybe even doing fairly well financially. They've got a good income, they've got a steady job. Maybe they're waiting for their retirement to kick in. It's funny, the more guys I talk with lately, I don't feel old, but I talk with friends who are like, yeah, somebody I talked with yesterday in the police. He's like, I'm 2 years away from retirement. I'm like, 2 years, bro, you're 42 years old. Like, are we getting old or what? How are you 2 years away from retirement? But these are individuals who, for one reason or the other, are dissatisfied in their work. How would you suggest to somebody that they either get started with something? Like, what do they look into? How do they get started? Whether they're looking at retirement or whether they want to step away from their corporate job. What are some of the recommendations you give to people?
I think you always need to have a side hustle, no matter what you're doing. And I actually recommend that you stay at work as you're doing this. Now, I think I've been teaching this class for a long time, and you don't have to sell physical products, but what you want to do is you want to just kind of think about everyday problems that you have in your life. I actually just recorded a podcast episode with my buddy Nick Loper. I think we're mutual friends, or you know of Nick, right?
Yeah.
And what we did is we just brainstormed off the top of our heads business ideas, and we just put that in a podcast episode. And I'll just give you some examples. There was, I just went to vacation to Japan, and I just got back, and my plants all died. So I was like, hey, what if there was like a plant hotel where I could drop my plants off? They would water them and take care of them, and when I came back, they wouldn't be dead. Right? Simple ideas like
Yeah.
that.
Interesting.
And if you just take a moment and look at your life, chances are you got a lot of problems, and there's a lot of things that you could think of that would make your life easier. And those are the best side hustles to pursue.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was at I was at Walmart. I was like, I need a plant in my house. So I went to Walmart. I'm gonna buy a plant. And I went to the garden section. I'm like, all right, that one's cool. I like that one. That one's cool. And the lady was watering it. And I'm like, that's gonna become me. And do I really want to water plants? And I'm like, no, I don't. I want to spend my time doing something else. So I bought fake plants. So I wouldn't need to take it to I wouldn't need to take it to a plant hotel, but it's an interesting idea. The other thing that I like about what you're saying too is contrary to what we see a lot is doing a side hustle while you're doing your other work. It seems like so many Instagram influencers are like, burn the boats, go all in. It's like, well, did you do that? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't do that. But, you should do that. It's like, I think it's dangerous. I didn't do that. I had Order of Man as I was doing my financial planning practice, and I didn't sell my practice until I was making decent money over here with Order of Man stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just put it to you this way. My wife and I, we started our first business when we were both working full time. And I stayed at my job because I really liked it. I was an engineering director working on microprocessors. And I stayed in my job until 2016. And at the end, when I finally quit, I was running 2 7-figure businesses, the event, everything that I do, and my kids were pretty young as well. You can totally do it if you have the drive to do it. And Today I work 20 hours a week to maintain those businesses so that I can spend most of my time, especially in the afternoons with my kids. I don't know how old your kids are, Ryan, but I'm driving all afternoon these days to all their activities. That's like my job now. So
What sports do you coach specifically?
I don't coach anymore because they're
Oh,
good
okay.
now. They're
Yeah.
teenagers now. So
They
they're a
outgrew
little
you. You're
beyond my,
coaching.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
So they play club volleyball right now, and
Okay.
it's, it's a traveling team. Like this weekend, we're all going to Reno, and it's a 3-day tournament. They're actually going to miss school for that, and that's just very demanding.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they're doing is better than being in a classroom setting for those
Oh
two
yeah,
days
for
or
sure.
whatever it is.
Teamwork. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and hard work and dedication and how to win and how to lose and how to talk to people and how to communicate effectively. I mean, you cannot replace what happens on the volleyball court or in our case the baseball diamond or football field. But yeah, I feel it when you say they've outgrown my coaching because my oldest, he's 14. No, he just turned 15. I can't coach him anymore. Like he's far exceeded my ability to coach him. But my 7-year-old, yeah, I can coach him all day long. In fact, we got a game tonight, baseball game. It's like herding cats. I can definitely do that.
Nice. Yeah, I was coaching volleyball and basketball, and
Okay.
it was a lot of fun. I dropped these plays, they would never follow them, but every now and then, once per game, they would follow the play and it would work exactly as planned, and it was the best feeling ever.
It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like this is something that I run across? And I've talked with other entrepreneurs who happen to be fathers as well. And this is something they run across. Do you ever feel like you're not being productive when you're with your family? I know that's a horrible thing to say, but if I'm being honest, like there's times where I'm like, I don't want to just sit here and like hang out in the backyard or at the park. Like I'm not being productive. How do you address that if that's an issue for you?
Yeah, so the way I schedule things is I literally work from when I wake up until noon, and in the afternoon I don't do anything except just kind of be around. Like we're not always hanging out with the kids, but I'm around.
Mm-hmm.
So my productivity actually wanes in the afternoon anyways. Like I'm much more productive in the mornings. So I never feel like I'm unproductive. Sometimes I feel like if there's a fire that comes up though in the afternoon, I do get distracted. But what I try not to do is check my phone, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yes,
Um,
it does. I don't know how you do that, but it makes sense.
well, usually I'm doing like if I'm doing something with them, I don't have my phone out, obviously. And we just have some policies like no phone at the dinner table and that sort of thing too. But you're right, it's tough. It's very tough. And for me, it's always been about ego because I want to be the best at what I do. And I want to always strive to be just like my peers, my masterminds, and that sort of thing. The way I've just overcome that is what I do now is every single year, I focus on one thing and whatever happens, happens. So, for example, this year, it's all about the book. Last year, it was all about the YouTube channel, and I grew it to 200K subs. The year before that, it was about TikTok. So every year, I just pick one thing and I do it well, and I don't stress out about it. And as long as I'm learning something, that has managed to satisfy my ego now for the last decade or so.
Hmm. It's interesting when you talk about the focusing on the one thing because as entrepreneurs we want to be good at it all and we see different outlets and different avenues. It's like, okay, great, I'm good on YouTube, but what about TikTok? Okay, I'm great on TikTok, but what about Instagram marketing? And good on Instagram, what about live events? And so how do you keep yourself from losing focus on all of the other things that you could focus on and just focus on the one thing you found valuable or that you want to focus on for the year?
Yeah, the way I kind of operate is I don't actually start anything unless I can fill it, unless I have a space for it in my schedule in such a way that I can maintain it forever.
Hmm.
So, for example, the YouTube channel, I hesitated on starting that channel for the longest time because video is probably one of the hardest things to do, right? You got to get your camera set up, you got to record, you got to get it edited and that sort of thing. So I didn't start my channel. I wanted to start one for 5 years. I didn't start one until relatively recently, until I had a system for it. So I started out by editing one video myself. I recorded myself editing it, and then I found an editor who could replicate what I did. And it was only after I had all those pieces in place did I actually start a YouTube channel. And today I have all those processes down so that It literally only takes me 20 minutes to record the video. I throw it overboard to my editor and it pops up on YouTube. And so the channel now just doesn't really take me that much time out of my week. I do that with everything that I do.
How do
It needs to
you
have a slot in the calendar.
that makes sense. How do you know when it's time to delegate? Because you and I, at the stage we're at in currently, have the luxury of bringing support on to help with editing, to help with uploading. Like, I haven't edited my own podcast for 7 years. But as people are getting started, you got to do it all. You got to take the trash out. You got to edit podcasts. You got to upload. You got to respond to people on social media and emails. When is the right time for people to start outsourcing some of this so that they can focus on what they love, like me, is podcasting? So I don't really want to do much more than that.
Yeah, what's funny, Ryan, is I'm actually anti-employee in a way
Hmm.
because I used to be a director of engineering, and my employees were awesome at that work. But what I found is I was spending a lot of my time dealing with personality issues and personal issues, and it's just kind of like a different type of work, than doing it yourself. So when I outsource, what I first do is I find out if there's a piece of software or something I can code up myself. So I'm an engineer, so I
Hmm.
can code myself. See if I can replace that with a robot. And we're living in a golden age right now with ChatGPT and AI, where
Definitely.
you can literally replace a lot of your jobs with a computer. I didn't have that back then, but that's the first thing that I do. And I've managed to replace a lot of aspects of my business with software and automation. Now, if I can't replace that with a robot or software, then I look at things that I hate doing first. I hate editing my podcast. I hate editing video. I know how to do it, but I'd rather not do it. Those are the first things I outsource. I never outsource anything that I do not know how to do myself. That's always been my policy. And I generally don't choose to outsource until it's become just so painful that I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm curious, what is your philosophy, Ryan?
Yeah, again, my philosophy's changed just because I'm in a position where I can afford to outsource. There was a time when I couldn't, but I'm very much in alignment with you. If I was drained by the work, it was crucial that I get rid of that as quickly as possible. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy the entirety, the breadth of what we do. It just means I don't like that element of it. So bring somebody else in. Um, yes, I think you're dead on. As far as all of the things that are outsourced now, I used to manage myself. And to your point about knowing how to do it, I know how to do it. I could do it. In fact, I just coached somebody last week with regards to editing a podcast, and I haven't edited a podcast for 5 to 7 years. And I was able to share with them because I cut my teeth doing it. I know how it's done, except for some new technology that's available. But
Sure.
I think you and I are very much in alignment with that, is get it outsourced. But I do like the idea of automation, robots, computer technology, AI to take on and do some of the heavy lifting that we don't want to do ourselves. That's a relatively new development, which I'm excited about.
Here's the beauty of outsourcing also is that I mainly use employees or workers in the Philippines, and they speak perfect English. The culture is such that my one Filipino VA that literally helps me run all of my wife quit her job is the best employee that I've ever had. She has the best attitude. And we've had other Filipino employees also. There's just this cultural difference that I found. I don't know if you have found this too, but between the people that we've hired in the US and people we've hired in the Philippines, the people in the Philippines, and we're generalizing here, but they want to do a really good, they'll go out of their way to do an exceptional job. And I just haven't had the same luck with US employees.
Hmm. I personally haven't had that experience. First, because I haven't outsourced overseas for work like that at all. So I don't know. But the people that work with us are tremendous. They're incredible. But I think the reason is they aren't random people. These are people that came up through our organizations, through our masterminds,
Yeah,
through our coaching, coming to events, and then we got to know and develop relationships with each other. And then I could see, oh, this person's good at this and this person's good at that. And I could invite them to be part of the organization based on what their strengths were. They're already bought into what we're doing. They believe wholeheartedly. So it isn't like, hey, I need to pluck out this assistant from wherever and plop them into this culture that we have. They're already bought into the culture that we have. So I haven't had that experience.
Yeah, you're doing things right then, Ryan.
Some
I
things.
think what I like about the Philippines is that the cost of living is much lower there, and so their
Mm.
expected wages are less. So if you just pay them really well for where they live, which is not a lot of money to you and me, then you end up getting these fantastic people that are loyal. Like I've had the same VA for 7 years now,
Oh, is that
actually.
right?
Yeah.
Wow. I want to go back to what you were saying with your friend where you were talking about brainstorming and you talked
Mhm.
about the plant hotel, for example. How
Yeah.
does a person who's brainstorming on what they should be doing first is that do you recommend that or does that just create chasing trends and chasing things that maybe aren't really meaningful and significant and they're just chasing what could make money? So that's a hang up I see there. And then also, how do you begin to filter out, hey, the plant hotel, good idea. The lawn mowing service, bad idea. Like how do you filter that out between what you should
Yeah.
approach and go for and maybe not tackle at all?
So what I advise most people do is pursue something that they're knowledgeable about,
Hmm.
right? And so that keeps you from jumping on trends. You're basically doing something that you know a lot about. So in the case of plants, that's probably not a good idea. Um, Let me give you an example. Right now, I play ultimate frisbee once or twice a week, and sometimes I like to play at night. So I know the sport really well, and I've been playing it for the last 25 years. Now, my hands get cold at night, and I'd been looking for a set of gloves to keep my hands warm so they don't go numb. But the gloves that are out there on the market right now are just too thick. Like I tried goalie gloves, they're just a little bit too thick and you lose feel of disc. So if I were to start another business, I might sell ultimate frisbee gloves. Super thin gloves where you can maintain the feel of the disc and still keep your hands warm. That's an example where I have knowledge of, I know like what someone is looking for in that product.
Do you mostly do, I mean, your background is e-commerce and you're talking about it now, another e-commerce product. Is that mostly what you would focus on versus we're not e-commerce. I mean, we have some merchandise as an
Yeah.
ancillary to what we do, but we're more service and coaching oriented than product based.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be e-commerce. It can be coaching. So my background is in e-commerce. So I teach e-commerce. Well, let me think of another example here. Uh, Before this all started, I was pretty good at Photoshop, right? And so if I'm good at Photoshop, I might think to myself, hey, can I leverage these skills maybe to teach a class or offer some sort of service with Photoshop? And I know for a fact that in e-commerce, let's say I wasn't doing e-commerce myself, but I know for a fact that people need their images on a white background in order to list them on Amazon. So maybe I would just target those Amazon folks, right, with my Photoshop skills. Maybe I would teach a class, maybe I'd offer a service and just go from there. It doesn't always have to be a physical product. I would say between what we do, Ryan, like if you it just kind of depends on what your time frame is for making money. So if you want to make money within a year, I would say selling something, whether it be a service or a product, is probably the way to go. If you have a longer horizon, I would say 2 to 3 years or longer, then I would say content is probably the best way to go because you don't have to physically deliver something. Like my class makes me a lot of money and I don't have to ship anything. It's just a repository of videos. And then I go on camera live also. Same goes with the podcast that I run. Sponsorship money comes in. So it really just depends on your time frame and how soon you need the money and the type of business that you want to run.
I think that's a good take. With what we did, I remember when I started, I was sitting down with a friend, Ever Gonzalez, and I was talking about this idea, and I've had other friends who I've consulted with even before we got started. And I remember saying to Ever, I'm going to do this for 2 years before I make the decision as to whether or not I keep going or I stop or I throw in the towel or I pivot or I change. I'm doing it for two. I'm in 100% for 2 years. And I think that speaks to what you were saying is that if you're going to do more of a service or content based product or business, you got to give it some time to develop and mature and grow. It doesn't happen overnight. Some people see it. They're like, oh, well, all you do is a podcast and talk with people on social media. Well, it's a little bit more challenging than that. And people usually don't see it until they get involved themselves.
Yeah, and I just speaking for experience, I didn't make any money with my blog until 2 years, and then it didn't make significant money until three. Likewise with my YouTube channel, it was making barely anything, but now it makes almost 300K just in AdSense alone after 3 years. For me, 3 years just seems to be the sweet spot for content.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going back to the concept of your latest book, which is Family First Entrepreneur, I'm really curious about what type of boundaries that you have in place between work and your home life, or is it all integrated and your kids and wife are deeply involved in your business? Is it separated? What is that? What do those boundaries and separation look like for you?
Yeah, so my wife is my business partner on the e-commerce store. For the content side, anything related to mywifequitherjob.com is me and only me. So the boundaries with my wife and I are that she's in charge of operations of the e-commerce store and I'm in charge of marketing. We don't overlap. We made the mistake of overlapping early on and we used to fight all the time. But now that we have separate boundaries, it's been really
Marriage is
good.
hard enough, and then you add a
I know,
business, and it's
exactly,
like
right?
one other thing.
Exactly. That's why I always advise that people don't work with their spouses actually, in a business. We made it work, but it took many years to get to that point.
Yeah.
In terms of the kids, um, I just try to make every single event, and we just try to make meals together if possible. Um, I have an agreement that I made with my wife because I have opportunities to speak at events and that sort of thing. I don't speak at more than 6 events every single year. And we
Hmm.
have this kind of like this, I don't want to call it a checklist, but it's kind of like this little document where if an opportunity were to arise, we calculate whether that's actually worth missing some of these events or not. And we figure out what the monetary value of that opportunity would be, and then ask ourselves, is that monetary value or whatever worth missing out on these sort of events?
How
And
do
we
you?
talk it through.
That there's so much nuance to that, because how do you say, oh, this kid's volleyball game is worth $20,000? like what's the nuance behind that?
So the nuance now is we're in a good place where money doesn't matter as much because we don't spend that. We're so frugal. We don't spend that much money as a family. And what we do is we just pay ourselves what we spend every year, and everything else that we make is gravy. So it would be very hard to entice me with money in an opportunity, right? What would entice me more is maybe, exposure, the ability to
Mm.
reach out to more people, right? And potentially help more people. That's more appealing. And it's really hard to quantify. But I think it's important to just have this talk. A lot of times, what I used to do when we first started out is I just said yes to everything. And then I'd go up to my wife and say, hey, by the way, I'm traveling here and there. And it wasn't a discussion. Now everything's a discussion and it's worked out well.
Yeah, I mean, with that nuance, it sounds like, because there are, how would we ever address, especially in an hour of conversation, address all the nuance and complexities of having these types of conversations with important people? But I think the point you're making, and this is the value, is that you and your wife are intentional about it, and you are willing to talk with each other about it and include each other in the thought process and include each other's feelings in it, I imagine, as well, about the opportunity or about the game. And I think the intentionality is what matters more than anything else.
And one thing that you left out is we'll actually talk to the kids too. I was like, hey,
Mm.
you know, I go to all your games, and how would you feel if I missed this game? Like, would it be devastating to you, or do you really need me there? If you do, I'll just drop it.
Do you think your kids can give you an honest answer to that, though? Because I question whether or not, because from where I sit, I imagine, and I've seen this, is like, no, dad, it's okay. I know work's important. But deep down in their little tiny souls, they're they're wishing dad was there at the game, and they feel like maybe they weren't as important as the other opportunity.
I think it just depends on your relationship with your kids and how old they are. My kids are teenagers now, so they kind of speak their mind.
Yeah, yeah, that's when you don't want them to, and then when you do want them to open up, they don't. So they get it completely backwards.
When they were younger, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, they might not say anything. Uh, so I mean, again, one of my policies is I try not to miss anything. Sometimes things come up, but I've been pretty good. I would say I make 99% of the things that my
Yeah.
kids are involved in.
Yeah. And then are they involved? Are the kids involved in your day-to-day operations? Do you have things for them to be part of with regards to your organizations that they can learn from? I know they're doing their own thing because you talked about that, but are they involved in what you're doing too?
Yeah. So over the holidays, when the e-commerce business gets busy, they come in and help.
Mm.
Um, my daughter actually is working on, so she has two businesses herself. She has that t-shirt business that we talked about earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
she actually started her own handmade jewelry business as well. What she's working on now, actually, what both kids are working on right now, is a class that's meant for teenagers to start their own businesses. And they're going to tailor it towards print on demand, which is a business that you don't really need that much money to start with. It
Right.
all just depends on your creativity. In case anyone listening doesn't know what that is, it's basically where you design something, and then there's a company that takes your design and prints it on t-shirts, mugs, and whatnot, and ships it to the customer. So you never have to touch the inventory.
Yeah, that's nice because that's a low capital type business, right? I see a
Yeah,
lot of guys that want to start things and it's capital intensive. It's like, man, how are you going to come up with $200,000? And what is that going to mean in a loan? Or, what's your payback strategy on that? Or what are you taking away from the family if you do that? But we live in such an awesome time. I think people sometimes complain about these things that, certainly there's things to complain about, but also tremendous opportunities with regards to AI, like we were talking about earlier, and just using the internet to keep costs low so that we can enter into things that we never would have thought possible 50 years ago.
totally. I mean, look, when we grew up, we didn't have, like, I was telling my kids about cassette tapes the other day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like,
They're like,
because
what?
they were complaining that they couldn't get the song that they wanted to play on Pandora. And that's when I started going off on, tapes, and when
Yeah.
I wanted to hear a song, I had to record it on the radio. So
I will say that is one of, I think, the greatest contributors for the decline in modern music is when we were kids, we had to listen to the entire tape. It wasn't, I mean, yes, you could fast forward, but it wasn't easy. And so the whole album better be good. And
yeah,
and now you can just come up with one stupid catchy song that's been done 3 dozen times already, and everybody can just download that one song for 99 cents, and there you go, and you don't need to make any other good music, and now you have your little place in history.
I'm really terrified of AI because I know for a fact that a lot of people are just pumping out chat GPT books on Amazon right now, or blogs or websites. And so it's basically going to be the year of spam this year, I feel.
Yeah, I wonder what the line is there, because even as this chat GPT and other programs have come available, I'm like, man, I could just have it. In fact, one of the first things I did, I'm like, let me check this out. I said, write an article with 8 fitness tips for men. And it was a 1,500 word article. 7 years ago, that was an article that I had to write myself and then pitch it to guys like you or other people that would maybe hopefully put it on their blog or their channels. And it spit it out in just a matter of seconds. It wasn't great, but it was solid. It was all pretty good.
I hear you. I hear you. And in fact, there was a post that I published not too long ago that was written maybe 85% based on chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now ranking on the front page of Google and generating me traffic. So the question now is, do I need as many writers as I have, or can I just get by with just an editor and a robot?
What is
I don't know.
the, I mean, obviously, we know what the benefit of that is. It saves time, it saves money, it helps promote visibility. Obviously, you're getting rankings on search browsers for that. So we know what the benefit is. What do you feel like? Where is the moral conundrum? Because it's to when I hear you say that, you're like, but I don't know. Like, so what is the downside that you see, and what are your concerns there?
I would say the downsides are some of these writers I've worked with for a long time, and so I don't know. I just worry about society because I think AI is just going to cause a lot of jobs to be lost, and those people who have had their jobs displaced need a way to make money and adapt. Otherwise, you can't have such a huge disparity between people who have money and people who don't. It just doesn't work in the long run.
But I mean, yeah, yeah, you're not wrong. It will definitely put people out of work. But this is an age-old story. This isn't anything new. Now the technology's new, but what we're bumping up against, where there's new developments in technology and processes and systems and commerce, have been putting people out of work for centuries. And we've found a way to adapt and focus on something different than maybe what we used to before.
I agree with you. It's been like that for a long time. But this just feels different to me, mainly because this is the first time that I think white collar jobs are going to get displaced, like software engineers, writers, lawyers, even some doctors. They're going to get displaced. I think it's the first time in history that that's happened.
Accountants. I'm doing my
Accountants.
taxes right now. I'm like, that would be awesome. Like, find every loophole. AI, go out and do your work. Find me every tax loophole. Find me every tax code. Squeeze this for everything that it's worth. And I got to tell you, that's pretty enticing.
Yeah. And that's why I'm a little worried. But, people will adapt. We're all going to adapt. I think people like you and me will adapt to the times. In fact, one thing that I'm kind of working on the side right now is I have this class with over 450 videos and 150 hours of material. I'm going to transcribe all that, feed it into a bot, and create Steve Bot. So if any
Mm,
students have any questions, they would just first line of defense is ask the bot, right? Because
yeah.
it's all my teachings. And then if I need to step in, that'll greatly cut down the support for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a great idea. There's so many great applications of it. I guess it, to me, as I hear you talk about this and the things that I thought, I think it just reaffirms your message of creating a side hustle, because we need to understand we're all replaceable. And the minute that your boss or your client can find a more effective, less expensive way of getting your service or product, they're going to take that route. And I don't hold any ill will against somebody for doing it. I would do that. So creating a side hustle like you're talking about, I think it's more important maybe than it's ever been for that very reason. We're all very, very replaceable.
This message comes at a good time too, at least in my area in Silicon Valley. Mass layoffs at all the high tech companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon. A lot of people are out of jobs, and for them, I had a friend who got laid off, and it's terrifying for them,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't have that thing that they can call their own that just kind of makes money on the side. And a lot of times, you can experiment with multiple side hustles, see what works. But I would follow your policy, Ryan. Whatever you choose, stick with it for at least 2 years and follow through with it. And who knows, it might turn into something big. I never thought in a million years that selling handkerchiefs would lead to a seven-figure business. No way.
Yeah.
Our goal
Right.
was $60,000 a year. That was our goal, but we exceeded that in the first year. Sometimes you surprise yourself with
Yeah.
things.
It's amazing. I've got a friend. I think I alluded to him earlier. He's on the police force here in town, and I talked to him just yesterday. And the reason I called him up is because I hunt quite a bit, and so I had to take some skulls to him to get cleaned up and to get done so I can mount them and they'll look really nice on the wall. And uh, I went over to his place yesterday, which happens to be in his garage, and he's got 100 different heads and skulls and mounts and horns and antlers that he's working on. And he's the gentleman I was saying that is retiring in a couple of years, and he's been doing this for at least 5 years. And to see his business grow, and then he had two guys there working with him, so they were cleaning. He was in there talking with me, and they were out cleaning skulls and doing things. I'm like, man, this guy has it figured out. He's got a side hustle. He's still on the police force. He's got his retirement that's going to be coming in 2 years. He's got a good steady income. He does meaningful work, and he has this side business over here. That business is not going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. Maybe robots in the future or something, but not yet. So he's good there. It's just a great way to inoculate himself against some other economic forces at play.
Yeah. Here's a funny story, Ryan. Uh, I think the side hustle can also boost your confidence at work. I was still working until 2016, and my businesses were making like 10x what I was making. And I got cocky. So I'd go into these meetings where my boss would be presenting. And before, I used to just kind of keep quiet in the background, kind of like the way I was raised. But once I didn't care anymore, I just started speaking my mind. I'd say stuff like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's going to work. And I remember my coworkers were like, hey, you realize that's your boss up there. You shouldn't like say anything bad while he's up there. But I was like, hey, I don't care. So I spoke my mind. And what ended up happening was I got promoted. I wasn't getting promoted before that, but all of a sudden I was getting promoted for speaking my mind.
Interesting.
And it was just something that I learned, like, you got to just be yourself and don't be afraid to speak up, and good things just always happen, was what I learned from that.
I think there's some energy there too, right? When you've got other revenue sources and other income, and like you say, your confidence, that's going to come across to people, and then it gives you the power to actually say things, which is the very thing that you should have been doing all along, but you couldn't because you were afraid and there was
Yeah.
risk associated with it. And now the risk is diminished, so you can say things, and the energy is what's presented, and people are attracted to that energy.
Another side benefit of having a side hustle, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, Steve, why don't you tell the guys where to connect with you? I know I get messages all the time about guys wanting to start side businesses. They don't know what to do, how to do it. I'm pretty intuitive guy. I'm like, I don't know, just start. But you're somebody who's spent a lot of time focused on this. So if guys have ideas about starting side businesses, they're going to get better advice from you than, I don't know, just start, which is what I would give them. So tell them where to go, and then also to pick up a copy of the book.
Yeah, I think the best place to start actually is to pre-order the Family First Entrepreneur, which you can do at thefamilyfirstentrepreneur.com. And the reason why is because, not just because of the book, but because I'm giving away these awesome bonuses. So you will get a 3-day workshop on how to start a print-on-demand business. You also get a 2-day workshop on how to get started with a content business, whether that be blogging, podcasting, or YouTube. And then I'm doing this 6-week, what I call a Family First Challenge, where I will be in there in a Facebook group with you guys live and just kind of help you figure out what you want to start and walk you through the first steps, regardless of what you want to start. And this is all you get, all this stuff just for pre-ordering a $30 book. If you guys are interested in e-commerce, you can catch me over at mywifequitherjob.com. I have a free 6-day mini course there as well. And if you guys ever want to hang out in person, you can go to the Seller Summit. The next Seller Summit is May 23rd. And oh, I forgot. If you guys are getting married, I can hook you guys up with some hankies over at bumblebeelinens.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you, brother. It's been good to follow up with you. It's been good to connect. And of course, what you do is inspiring and has helped motivate me too. So really appreciate your time, man.
Dude, thanks for having me, Ryan.